On this episode of the Brilliant Humans podcast, I'm joined by Tom Barnes, or Barnesy as he's more commonly known. Tom is a sports media executive and self-confessed endurance junkie who is married to Laura, is the proud dad to two little legends, Archie and Izzy, and lives very much by a work hard, play hard philosophy. Although if you know Barnesy like I do, it's more play hard. Outside of work, Tom is a keen amateur cyclist who loves the freedom, adventure and camaraderie the sport brings. So much so that he's also a ride leader for the brilliant LeBlanc cycling experiences. Today, Tom is here to talk about not one, but two brilliant humans. So let's dive in. Hello, Barnesy.
Griff, good evening. Hello, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well. Barnesy, look, you've missed out a key detail, which I think people should definitely know. It said you were an endurance junkie, but you have rode the Atlantic, which not
Yeah.
many people can say. So tell us about that.
Well, yeah. Firstly, thank you for the intro. It sounded like you were reading my eulogy at my funeral, and you did it very well. So, if that day does
Book
happen,
me.
feel free to step up, please. Yes, round the Atlantic. Wow, long time ago. 2010, I think it was. So, a mate of mine from uni emailed some friends and said, lads, I've booked and entered this race in a couple of years' time. Anyone interested? And I replied and said, yeah, love to know more, Rich. Tell me more. Let's meet up. Heard nothing from him for weeks and weeks and weeks. Rang him, said, Rich, got your email about around the Atlantic. How are you going to decide? I guess you're inundated with people interested to do it. And he said, Barnesy, you were the only one to reply, so I guess we're going to have to meet up. And took a couple of years, and it actually links into what we're chatting about today, Brilliant
Oh,
Human.
brilliant.
Oz, my family was a huge part of the team that got us to the start line, particularly my dad. And without him, we wouldn't have got to the start line. And he was very much the third person in our two-man boat that rowed across the Atlantic in 72 days.
Wow. Well, look, I want to come. You've kind of hinted on one of the brilliant humans, so we're going to come back to that in a second. But I think it's really important because didn't you tell me once that more people have climbed Everest than have done what you've done rowing the Atlantic?
Yeah, I think at the time, and these numbers would have changed, but back in 2010, when we successfully finished, Rich and I were one, there was less than 200 people in the world who had successfully rowed any ocean, not, the Atlantic is the most common, but any ocean in the world. At the time, we were one of less than 200 people. So yeah, I can't remember the stats for Everest. That can be summited in 200 people might do that in a couple of months. So there's maybe thousands who have summited Everest. Perhaps.
Yeah. Wow, what an incredible achievement. So yeah, I mean, look, it leads nicely, and that wasn't planned, by the way. It sounded like that was all planned, and it wasn't at all. That was just by chance. But I thought it was important to mention it. But let's jump in then. So you mentioned your dad. I'm guessing, therefore, he's one of your brilliant humans. So
Good guess.
Is that correct? And who is the other one?
Well, it's my mum. So the team, the mum and dad team, who have known me for a very long time and have been huge rocks, foundations, and inspirations, I guess, in my life.
Yeah. Well, look, let's jump in a little bit more because I've met your mum and dad, and they've definitely got the vibe. My kind of take on it is they were the kind of parents I could imagine all of your mates wanted to be around when you were growing up. So I mean,
true. So true.
And I've only met them a few times, but I've just always so enjoyed their company. So tell me, what makes them brilliant then? Thinking about your mum and dad.
Well, funnily enough, I spent some time. I thought, because obviously I knew I was chatting to you this evening, and I thought I can't just come on here and just try and blaze my way through this. And I gave it some thought, and there were so many things, and I sort of tried to compartmentalize mum, dad, and then how they work together as a team. But to answer your question, like mum is so fun. She's so kind. There's like unconditional love to everyone. She's the most thoughtful person that you could ever come across. She always puts others first. She was a PE teacher by trade, so PE and geography teacher. So very much the sport background. That's where my interest in sport and participation comes from. It's from mostly mum's side, and And yeah, our friends, she taught at the secondary school that I went to, my brother went to, my sister went to. So most people say, "Oh, having your mum at your school must have been horrible." It was the opposite. It was brilliant. She was a cool teacher, and the kids, no one had an issue with mum. She was just thoroughly decent, and to your point, yeah, everyone used to gravitate and probably hang out at our house because they were just good people.
And how long have they been married?
Oh, that I should know this, shouldn't I?
I know I put you on the spot there.
They had their golden wedding. I'm gonna say it's 52 years now, but I'm probably, now that I've said that, I've got it wrong. But
But
they
it's
had
at
their
least
golden,
50.
yeah, 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 and they had it,
Wow.
yeah, and
So,
they
so,
had
so
it.
let's go right back. So, I
Sure.
mean, how did they first meet? Do you know that?
Well, yeah, 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 yeah. So they're both originally from Southend in Essex. So both sides of my family are from Essex, and my dad went to school with my mum's brother, so my uncle. So Uncle Pete and Dad were friends. Dad used to come round to see his mate Pete, and thought, "Oh, she's quite nice, that Linda." And yeah, that's how they met, and that's how they got together. So and yeah, we've still got some family in Essex and Southend, but mum and dad moved out of the county. Went off to university, both of them, and yeah, they've lived mostly in Surrey probably for the last 40 years, I guess.
So you mentioned your mum's name, Mum
Yeah.
Linda. What's your dad's
Yes.
name?
So dad is Paul, and yeah, dad has very similar personality traits to mum, and that's why they gel in so many ways, and that sort of becomes infectious, and that love spreads. Dad's very much generous, kind, loving, supportive, helpful. He gives me, both of them do really, the belief that give it a go, dream big. And going back to the Atlantic story, I remember when I told Dad I wasn't a rower and I'd never been to sea before. So it tells you shouldn't, not most people would say that's not your ballpark, stay away from that. I read up a lot about it. I learned a lot about it. Yes, there's risks, but no one had died doing one of the organised races. People have been injured, so that gave me a bit of comfort. But you're in the middle of the ocean, so anything could happen. I remember telling my dad and said, "Dad, I want to do this race in a couple of years. I'm going to put the deposit down and enter it." His first reaction, and you never forget these things, was, "What can I do to help? What can I do?" you know? And to me, that was like, wow, okay, we're in. And his word was, "I will help get you to the start line, but I'm not getting in that boat for love nor money."
I mean, I
So
don't blame him.
yeah, I mean, so we had a deal, and I felt like a lot of, because I knew the time and effort Dad spent to getting us to the start line. Rich and I were working full time. We were training, we were fundraising, we were trying to, have a normal life, which was pretty tough for a couple of years because everything was focused on raising the money, getting fit, passing all the courses, getting all the kit needed for it, shipping the boat by, yeah, it just went on and on. Dad was the anchor that just took everything as much as he could offer so that we could just focus on what we needed to do. There was huge ups and downs, huge learnings on it, but that calmness, that professionalism from him was invaluable.
And just to put it into context, how much does it cost to do that race? Because people are probably
It's
sitting here going, "Oh, what is that? A couple of thousand?" It's not, is it? It's a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, ballpark figure, and this may change now. This was 15 years ago almost that we did it. It was about 60 to 70,000 pounds just to do the race. You've got to buy the boat, ship the boat out there, buy all the equipment, pass all the courses. It goes on and on, the list of stuff that you need to do and have. We raised 15 to 20,000 pounds for charity. Ironically, it should be the other way around. You should be raising 60 or 70,000 pounds for charity, and it should cost you 10 or 15. It doesn't, and it wasn't. We actually bought our boat third hand and then sold it once we'd finished. And it went on to do the Atlantic, I think 4 or 5 times. And then eventually someone tried to row from San Francisco to Hawaii. They got into trouble and got rescued, and then it had to get scuttled and is now on the bottom of the Pacific somewhere, which is not a
Ooh,
happy ending. But yeah,
at least it's the
so
boat and not you.
exactly. exactly. Yeah,
So you said about, I mean, your dad's initial reaction. I mean, that is just incredible. And again, the part of this is what we can learn from these brilliant
yeah,
people. And now I think if my son ever says I've got a crazy plan, instead of just pouring cold water on it straight away or questioning it, I'm just going to go, okay, cool. How can I help? What was your what? But mums are different. Mums
yeah,
are different. What was your
yeah, yeah,
mum's initial reaction to, hey, I'm going to go and spend 3 months at sea and do this
yeah.
incredibly dangerous thing?
Do you know what? That's a really good question. I can't actually remember it, but it wasn't, Tom, don't do this. What are you thinking of? It wasn't that. Mum may have been slightly less vocal in her, immediate reaction, but whatever we needed to do, like we had planning meeting after planning meeting for the best part of 2 years and we'd always be round at mum and dad's with Rich and dad sorting out stuff. Mum was like just a chef. She'd be like, right, what do you need? What can we get you? And it was just all that sort of side of things just took off so much bandwidth that we didn't have in our head to be able to focus on what we needed to do. But yeah, I think that unconditional sort of love and support when, I was at sea and there were some dark times, it helps get you through things. And I also felt I knew how much time and effort they'd all put in. I felt like a sense of responsibility that, oh, I've got to finish this. It's not going to be me calling for a mayday unless I
Yeah.
really have to.
Yeah, but you did finish it, and that's incredible. And I'll ask this question now, and then I want to go back a little bit on their story. But how do you think having brilliant parents? I mean, you are so lucky because not everyone has that, and I think when you're
Yeah,
growing
yeah.
up, you just assume that everyone's got these parents, and but actually, when you get out into the real world, you go, "Oh my word, other people's parents aren't like this." But how do you think it's affected the way you parent your kids?
Well, it's really interesting because, I mean, you're the same. We've both got children. And when you become a parent, it's not like someone walks up to you in the hospital after your first baby's been born and gives you a textbook and says, there you go, this is what you need. Everyone learns on the job. And my greatest learning has, come from, my mum and dad. And I try and think, well, what would they have done? How would they have done it? And I'm trying to do that with Archie and Izzy. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think the big thing here is, yeah, I've had great role models and I've been very lucky, and I want to use those lessons, those learnings to help me as a parent.
And I think
And
that one of the big things about this podcast is actually the people coming on realizing they've been blessed, and it's either the parents or the siblings or the
yeah,
coach or the teacher, but it's taking time to actually go, I am really lucky to have these people around me.
yeah,
And that's what I love about this.
I think one thing I've learned over the years, and is energy, positivity, and just sort of that go-getter spirit. That's why I love hearing from you, chatting to you, because you have those vibes. Mum and dad have those vibes. There is never a day, and hand on heart, mum's 73. I've never rang her, spoken to her, and she's gone, oh, I'm having a terrible day. I'm really, never that. You ring mum, and it's just energy, life, fun, happiness, all the things that are good and positive. And that's not always the case in the world, but she's never said a bad word about anyone. And bearing in mind, you've met a few of my friends and know a few of them very well. There are some wrong ones in amongst that group.
No comment.
and
No comment.
and she, mum, loves everyone unconditionally. I think a key thing I didn't say in the introduction about the two of them is their religion. That they're strong Christians,
Right.
and
Okay.
that's probably a very key point that I should have alluded to. Dad, for years, was an atheist, and it wasn't until he retired that God found him and was a
Right.
real moment in his life. They're both very heavily involved in the church in Woking, and that sort of Christianity is, they do so much volunteering and so much good in the community. It's just a really, nice thing to see. Actually, I remember, I thought about this when I was driving home. When I was at IMG for a long time, we used to have an annual uh, community day, whereas basically all the staff around the world, not just in London, would go into a community and do good for a day. They called it Walk the Walk. So I was asked to sort of round up a team of 20, 30 people at IMG and put them into a charitable event somewhere. So the first person I could think of is, right, ring mum, she'll know someone to do something. And we did the first one. We did this house clear in Woking, which was just like, it was like Challenge Annika. We just went down there with this massive team and just transformed this garden in this house. It was incredible. And everyone at work was buzzing. And it was all because mum had found this project. We went down there, transformed it before and after, everyone in the day. And then obviously next year came, people at work were going to me, but Barnsley, has your mum found us a project for next year yet? And it became an annual thing, and she did. And she just kept going.
I love that. And it's
Yeah.
interesting you talk about the religion, because I know obviously some people will be listening and they might be agnostic or atheist. But I've said this on a previous podcast because I had a conversation with another one of our guests about this. And I think there is so much good in that sort of community spirit, in the going out and helping the community, volunteering, singing as a group, positive thoughts. Again, I think it's positivity. I do think is a habit, and so it's no surprise that your mum and dad have probably practiced, positive prayer or praying for people or seeing the good in people, and that's come from their religion.
Definitely. Yeah. And it's just things like that volunteering aspect. Like remember growing up, mum was like a brownie leader, volunteered for years, did it, even after my sister left the group, mum would carry on, a couple of nights a week, or, for years, any type of like community thing through the school, PTFA, mum would be involved in. She was a volunteer at the Citizens Advice Bureau for years and just, sit there and help people that she never knew or may never see again, but she'd always be that sounding board. She now does this incredible thing each week in Woking, this Christian charity called Besom. If you rang up and said, I've got this sofa and, it's no good for me anymore, I don't want any money for it, but come and pick it up from me. Besom turn up at your house, pick it up, and they deliver that to someone who needs it. And they do it with anything. And, mum does that week in, week out. It's a volunteer role all round Woking, and I can imagine she's in her 70s now doing that, humping furniture on her own. I don't know many 70-year-olds who've got that energy and oomph to do it.
And I'll come back to Paul in a minute, but where do you think that drive to help others comes from your mum then? Do you have any idea? What's that essence in her that she's
Good
got that she's
question.
just so driven towards that?
Don't know, but she was like it growing up. Like if we as children, any of the three of us would ask for anything at any time, help, to do anything at any point, nothing was too much trouble. And then you throw in the fact if she's a mum, an auntie, nieces, nephews, godchildren, it's the same for everyone. She's the sort of person who, if you weren't well, Griff, and, she knew you, she'd be dropping round cake to your house or a card in the post, handwritten and anything to do to help you. You'd be like, wow, oh, Linda's here again. Oh, brilliant. That is what she's like. She's like 10 steps ahead. And it makes, every time I think I need to do that, I haven't done that, mum would have already done. It's great.
Well, if there's cake involved, just let her know I'm not feeling great, because I'll take cake any day. um, and it would be lovely to see Linda again. So back to Paul. So you said, so Linda was the PE teacher. She was, she did that for a long time, and then she obviously did all this volunteering. What career path did he follow then? What was his job?
Yeah, so Dad went to Leeds University to study mathematics, and he was the first one in his family to have gone to university. So it was a really big thing, and a real proud thing for him and my granddad, and that side of the family. Went to university, did really well, and having studied mathematics, he wanted to become an actuary, which is a lot more study once you've been to university, which he did. He qualified after years of exams and training on the job effectively. And then, he's very much an entrepreneur. He got to a point where he thought, right, I'm going to quit the, paid role and set up my own business, which he did. And then he grew the business, and it became his passion, I would say, because whatever Dad puts his mind to, he's all in. I guess my sort of tunnel vision from sport and endurance comes from Dad in that sense. And, he got me into cycling. It was him. He So I was 15, well, he obviously taught me to ride a bike when I was a kid, but I was about 16, 17, and I saw an advert in the paper that said London to Paris cycle ride next summer. 4 days, British Legion, raise, £1,000, sign up here. I read it. I thought, yeah, I really fancy that. I've just ridden around Woking at the time. I wasn't a cyclist. And I showed Dad. I said, Dad, I'm going to sign up for this next year. And he looked at it and he said, Tom, I'm going to do it with you. I'm really keen. I went, you can't do that, Dad. You're way too old. You're way too unfit. And he was like, no, no, no. I
He's probably in
will.
his 40s. He's probably younger than us
He
now.
probably was. He probably was. And he said, no, no, Tom, I will sign up for it. We'll sign up for it. I'll buy us a tandem. We'll train together and we'll do it together. And true to his word, he went out the next week, spent a lot of money on a beautiful racing tandem. And for years, he and I didn't have a solo bike for years. We were cycling before it was fashionable, Griff, back around Surrey. And then, that's how I got into cycling. And it was on those trips that Dad and I would spend as a team and doing things together. He'd finish work, I'd finish college. We'd go out on the bike for an hour or a couple of hours in the evening in the summer, do these long distance rides together. And then we did London to Paris, London to Brussels. We did all sorts of stuff around the UK and just had great memories.
You're listening to the Brilliant Humans podcast, where, here's the catch, no one is talking about themselves, only the brilliant human who has changed their life. If you've got someone you'd like to celebrate, drop us a note at brillianthumanspodcast@gmail.com. And look, I try not to compliment you too much, but it's hard not doing that on here because you are brilliant. You are an incredible business person. You are very driven, but you're also super fun. You also do these crazy sports challenges. You've always been good at sport. You're one of those annoying guys. It's just kind of there must be something wrong with you, and I'll speak to Laura about that one day. But
well,
but you're a real.
That might be a long conversation.
Yeah, we'll get her on. That's a different podcast. That's the Awful Humans podcast. But all jokes aside, it sounds like you're a real mix of both of them.
Yeah.
In that sense.
Well, Laura's always said that actually, and like Mum is the last person on the dance floor. She's into her 70s. She's that ball of energy. Dad is the more sort of, I look like Dad. I'm tall, graying like Dad. So visually, Dad and I look very similar. But in terms of more personality traits, I've definitely got more of Mum's. So yeah, very much a blend of the two. I hopefully the best bits from both of them, I'd say. A couple of years ago, Griff, they sold up, I don't know if you know this, they sold up the house in Woking and they went traveling for 15 months. So in their 70s. So they got to the point where they said they're fit enough and young enough, in inverted commas, to do it now. They may not be in 10 years' time. So they thought, well, let's go traveling. And they did 26 countries, I think, in 15 months. America, Central America, South America, Africa, Australia, Asia, and bumped around. Yeah.
That is amazing.
It was
not for your inheritance, but it is amazing for them. I mean, what do you think when if people are listening to this and they're thinking, okay, how can I take some steps to become brilliant like these two people? What do you think the biggest starting point of that is to become like your mum and dad?
It's a really good question. I think as a takeaway, I think the best thing they try and do is do good. Whether, and you can't really define that, but, that's what they do all day, every day. And nothing is too much trouble. Life's more interesting when you say yes. Do it, give it a go.
I think you're right. I think it's that sort of, it's almost like that appreciation for life and going, right, while we're here, we're going to experience as much as we possibly can.
Yeah.
Again, thinking about, because what I love about this, and actually there's a real energy just coming through when you're speaking about your mum and dad, and we've heard just a few of them amazing things. Right now, I feel like the world could do with more Linda and Pauls. How do you think the world would be different if people would just go out there and just take some of the advice they've heard today?
Well, I always think, and I'm guilty of this myself, I don't think I'm doing enough good day to day. I'm in the corporate world, at the desk for far too long, doing what I need to do to make money for the business, which is what I'm doing. Am I walking past someone on the way to the subway and they're begging for money? Yes. Do I contribute every time? No. And that bugs me. Should I be? And, if I contribute there, should I contribute here? You're constantly in that sort of dilemma of how and where to support. I guess to your point is everyone could and should do more. Mum and dad will probably say they could and should be doing more, but from us looking at them, I already think they do a lot and I don't do enough. So yeah, I think it's a really good question and there isn't a simple answer, but I had it, this is very random. I was at the supermarket the other day and I was asking a lady for a coin for, you've got to put a pound in to get the thing. And I didn't have the pound coin, but I had the change. I said to this lady, do you have any change for a pound? And she said, no, you can have my trolley when I've emptied it and the pound. I was like, no, I can't. Take the change, take the change. She wouldn't accept it. And what she said was really interesting. And, it was brilliant. She said, do something good for someone else. And
Yeah.
what a lovely thing to do. So, yeah. And I then took the pound and then used that
buy a scratch card for yourself.
Oh, but,
Thank you.
But you remember those little things, don't you?
Of course, exactly.
And
it doesn't need to be the big things. It really doesn't. The small things have so much impact as well. And you're so right. Pay it forward. Do something good for someone else, and don't expect anything. And I think that's what I'm hearing about, your mum and your dad. It's not like they're asking for it back. They're just going out there and they're giving. And actually, what's happened is the world has returned them great stuff because they haven't asked for it. I mean, I'd love to talk about them more. I love the idea that they're going to be listening to this, and I'm sure they'll be very, very humble. So this is actually your chance to make them feel a little bit more awkward, because we like to finish the episode by saying, and look, I don't know what your relationship is with your parents, but with mine, I know I need to tell them how brilliant they are much more than I do. Yeah. So what would you like to say to your mum and dad, your brilliant humans?
Yeah, thanks, Griff. Mum, Dad, when Griff asked me to come on the podcast, one, that's a great honour, and two, he said what the subject matter was, there was no doubt who I could think of and want to talk about straight away. Thank you for everything you've done for me, for Adam, for Ellie, the whole family, probably half of Woking, half of Surrey, that you've helped at some point in your life. The best accolade I can give you is that every time I think of you both, you bring a giant smile to my face, and that is something that will never change. So keep being you, keep being fun, loads of energy, loads of positivity, and I just love everything about you and all that you stand for. Mwah.
I love that, and I would like to add a little note to them. They've annoyingly raised a really good son as well. So congratulations on that, because you've molded this thing into someone brilliant. And mate, you are brilliant, and I feel like I should tell you that. I mean, your achievements, but not only that, it's the real stuff. You're always there. You message, you check in, and I've said this on the podcast a few times. It's those friends that just check in. And we might go a few months without speaking, and then we speak, and it feels like we've been speaking every day. And that means an awful lot to me. So I really think you are the embodiment of your parents. And so it's really nice to actually hear more about them, because now it makes perfect sense why you are like you are. So thank you as well.
No, thank you. And congratulations on the success of the podcast. When you first told me about it and I heard you were doing it, I was like, look out, Stephen Bartlett, #1 podcast in the UK. Griff is coming.
Exactly. I'm coming for you, Bartlett.
but what I love about what you've done is the concept, Griff, is so unique, because everyone has brilliant humans in their life, and the more of them in the world, the better.
Thank you for listening to the Brilliant Humans podcast. If you've got a brilliant human you'd like to celebrate, then email us at brillianthumanspodcast@gmail.com to find out how to share their story. Or if you've got someone you'd simply like to thank, why not tell them now? It might just make their day. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to follow, like, or leave us a comment. It really helps more people discover these brilliant stories. See you next time.